Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is you are with Shayla Brown of Genesis Birthing and Living, and this is the Listening to Black Women web series, podcast, and blog series. Today, I have with me Miss Janice Fredericks-Spell of the Retail Genius. I'm very, very excited. I'll talk a little bit about why I asked her to join us, and then I will let her get into who she is and what she does. So first, let me just say, my perception of you based on social media, why I wanted to reach out to you. So what I'm doing with the Listening to Moms to Black Women podcast is just that, listening to Black women. There's a hashtag where we're saying listen to Black women, and people are not listening to Black women even when it concerns our own bodies and our own health. So I thought that I would use my little platform to actually listen to Black women and move beyond the statistics of our mortality rates, or our adverse birth outcomes that we're having. So what was interesting to me about you is that, so one, of course, you're a Black woman, doing your thing, you have a beautiful family and you have these young kids, and I saw you have Irish twins. So I felt that, all my kids are like back to back to back to back, like 15 months apart. So I was like, I get that. You seem to have similar beliefs about birth. So from what I can see, it seems like you take birth very seriously, take your pregnancy very seriously. You utilize support. I saw you talking about having a doula. It seems like your husband is very supportive. I think you birth naturally for all of your births, or at least for the one that okay. And then you celebrate birth and you make it look so good, like your pregnancy. I get pictures and you all across, you traveling and stuff, and you in all these cute outfits, and I'm like, she is making this look really, really good, So that kind of changes that narrative that pregnancy is just this, you're just this time where you just wait, you're miserable and you're just waiting for it to be over. I love to see Black women who are enjoying being pregnant. So I think that's beautiful. And of course, you're a mompreneur, so just that in itself is a whole deal. And it seems like you balance that pretty well from what I can see across social media. But most of all, what I'm most interested in is the fact that you love, follow, and live your life for Jesus. And I think that is so important. And I think that's a part of birth that's not a part of the conversation of birth that's not brought in typically. And I kind of want to highlight that a little bit more because I think it's very important. And I think it's very helpful to the pregnancy and birthing process. So, and Genesis Birthing and Living, the name comes from the book of Genesis in the Bible. So that's, right up my alley. So those are all the reasons I was interested in you and in hearing your story and your perspective on birth. So now I will just, before I start asking you a whole bunch of questions, I will just let you tell us who you are, what you do, and what your why is behind what you do.
Awesome. So, you did an amazing introduction. Just off of Instagram is very true to what you said. So, again, my name is Janice Fredericks-Spell. Like you mentioned before, I'm a mom of 3 under 3. I've had all my kids back to back, so I've literally been pregnant every single year for the past 3 years. I'm a wife. My husband is law enforcement. He's amazing. And I'm also a Christian. And what I do for a living, I help African American women get into the beauty supply industry. So I do consulting as well. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay. Thank you. So what got you into the Retail Genius is what your brand is.
I actually opened my own beauty supply store 10 years ago when I was just 24 years old here in New York City. And I started that business because I saw that there was a deficit of Black entrepreneurship in the space of beauty supply. And so that I wanted to open my own store. And when I opened my own store, I saw that there were not many mentors that look like me that I can go to. We all know that these stores have historically been owned by Asians. And so there was no mentorship for me, a woman of color. And I wanted to change that. And so that's how I started the Retail Genius. And now I teach other women of color how they can become financially free and make their own schedule. All the things that I was able to do in my younger 20s, I'm now teaching women that all the things that I did to be successful in beauty supply, I'm able to pass on that knowledge since I have so many years and experience and all that good stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the why. I want to see the numbers change in this industry. We're still underrepresented in this industry. And so I'm just trying to change that narrative as well.
Well, I can understand that. Birth work is not different. So, well, yeah, so I understand that. Thank you. Okay, so let's just get right to it then. How many birth stories do you have?
3.
Okay, all right. So why do you want to tell? Why did you agree to do this? Why do you want to tell your story, and what do you think the importance is of you and maybe Black women telling our story?
You know, what's interesting is my first baby. I did not see a lot of women of color like on like YouTube who were sharing their story of birthing their baby unmedicated or naturally. So from my first child, I've always wanted to share my story because representation is very important in our community. If we can see someone else that looks like us that has done something, that gives us the confidence. And so since my first child, I've always wanted to share my story. And as Instagram and social media has become more popular, we obviously see more platforms where we can do that. So with you, I saw a platform. I'm like, okay, this is perfect. This is my time to share my stories.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I could be there. That's the whole point.
You were.
Yeah, that's the whole point. That's good. Okay. So I guess just on that same topic and just that same area, what do you hope that women can gain from hearing your story? And what maybe did you wish you could have gotten from hearing other Black women's stories?
Just the confidence, that you can do it. I think that's the first step, is having that inner confidence that because I've seen someone else do it, I feel like I can also do it. I think confidence is just what we need just to get things done in general, next to the support system, obviously. But it's just that inner confidence that I have the ability to do this. My body was made to do this. And, with the right support team, I can get it done.
Okay. And how do you think that goes against the narrative that we typically get as Black women in birthing?
I think so. Going back to my first birth, I think that not having the right support system can go against that. I feel like we're just not educated in medically. So when I was going and I was talking to different doctors, they weren't talking to me about, having this birth naturally and that it's possible and I don't need the epidural, I don't need all these other things. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like having someone tell their story and being able to hear from someone who looks like you that it can be done goes against, traditionally how we're treated in hospitals, in the doctor's offices, things of that nature.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Because I do think it's important for us to be informed, and it's important for us to, to tell, like you said, the stories from our perspective, because while there are a lot of people who intend to tell our stories and who intend to just put a spotlight on what we're going through, I think at the same time it creates a lot of fear, because if you just put Black maternal health in Google, then just death starts coming up. So right. While it's important to raise awareness, it is also important, like you said, to share what we can be doing, what the positive parts of it, what we can do to combat that narrative, to combat some of those outcomes. So
absolutely.
So birthing naturally, why did you want to do that? What led to that? Is that the typical, how does birth typically go in your family? And what was that like for you? What was that journey?
So I originally wanted to look into it because in my family, all of the women have had C-sections, and I saw what that looked like with my sisters, and it was scary. The postpartum care of it, not being able to pick up your own baby, and all of that was really scary to me. And I thought, like, dang, everybody got to get a C-section. I just thought, like, a lot of people that I knew was getting C-section. I'm like, this is weird to me. It just doesn't sound right. And again, I didn't know anyone personally who's ever gone through the process. And I saw a movie, the Ricky Lake movie, The Business of Birthing, or something like that. And then that just like kind of instilled in me a little spark that, like, maybe you can do this, like maybe it's possible. So I had to do like a lot of my own research, just researching midwives in New York, and just having conversations with them. And then before that, I was having conversations with regular doctors, and every time I would mention, like, not wanting to get the epidural, like the feedback that I got was always just shady. It was always like, it's possible, but, most women do this. And it was just, the vibe was just always off. And so that just moved me to the next level of, okay, like maybe I don't want this type of doctor. Maybe I want a midwife, or, just look into other things. Because again, I'm just doing this kind of blindly. I don't really have anyone to kind of talk to. And so I'm just on Google, just Googling, how to get this done. And then I started talking to midwives, and that's when, I was, given that confidence, like, girl, you don't have to like go through that. Like they're paid to do this. And so that was like the next step for me. It's just like finding the right support system. So I got with a midwife, I got with a doula. And then that was like my whole team. And then from there, it was just like, easy, because I was getting the right information. And that was really important for me at that time, was just like confirming what I kind of already knew, that, my body was like made for this. Like my great grandmother did it this way. My grandmother did it this way. So why the shift from my mom to my sisters with getting this major surgery, like, going from natural and having to do this major surgery, and you have to have people hold your baby, when you come home. It's just like, it didn't seem organic to me. It's like, this is just off.
Okay. And what was the feedback that you got from that? How did your family support that? How did they react to it? How did that go?
My mom, God bless her heart, she just didn't really understand why I would go through this without an epidural. Like, why would you put yourself through this pain? My sisters too, they were just like, I don't understand why you're doing it this way. Like, you don't have to do it this way. It's 2017, we have medication. And so they didn't really understand it at first, but when they saw me bounce back and I'm able to hold my baby, I'm able to do, cook, do all the things that I was doing before, they were like, okay, maybe this isn't so bad,
Yeah. Okay. And how do you think, because treading those waters, it's the same thing for me, just trying to be the pioneer in your community, of something like this. How did you, like, what did you use to, I guess, to drive you? Were there parts of your faith that informed this, or that grounded you or steadied you, or were you just felt driven to do it?
Well, faith always plays like a major role in pretty much everything that I do. But just going back to just like my inner instinct that, like, just feeling like I think there's a different way to go about this. Like, I have a feeling that there's a different way to go about this. And then also, like, praying about it and getting that confidence from the Lord within my prayers that, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, right? You can do all things, anything that comes my way. I feel like if there's something in me that starts to talk to me that, this is something that you can do, this is something I want you to look into, I know that that's the Holy Spirit talking to me. So just leading with that and just continuing on the step, just like, anything, with business, with anything, just first taking that first step, and then the Lord reveals the next step and the next step. He gives you all these resources that confirms that this is the way I want you to go about this next thing. that is exactly what happened with me with my birth. Just the Lord moving me and guiding me to the first resource, which was my midwife, and then the doula. Just me and everyone who was, really cheering me on and championing me that this is something that I can do, even though I have never seen anyone do it, right? So it's like a complete faith walk, right? We have never been in this area before. This is something that has not been done, but given that confidence, right? That's like the whole meaning of faith. Having that confidence of things unseen is what driven me to like the next step and to go through with the whole birth.
Amen. That's good. That's great. That's great. And that's so true. And I asked that question because I'm going to kind of shift into like your team now. I asked that question too, because as a birth worker, I found that what I wanted was for my focus to be shifted more into women of faith, and even when talking with and working with women of faith, it's like, wow, I am having to convince you, like you said, just the extension of the principles from church to birth. You know what I mean? Like if we use this to get our bill money, if we use this space to, to drive us to church every Sunday, like let's extend that into birth. And so when you're, wondering like, why in the world would you do that? How could you do that? Like, you're not even scared. It's like, no, like you said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Isn't that the whole point? Like, isn't that why we know why we're doing that? So I think that's powerful.
Absolutely.
But on the second note for your team, you are like a birth worker's dream. Okay. You like on the other side of being a birth worker, you meet so many women who love the idea of a natural birth. Like they really do want it and they love it. And they don't have the support at home. They don't have the cultural references for it. And they just falter so easily, and you go in as a birth worker and you're like, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is the plan and this is how you do natural. And then you get to the hospital and it's like they want the epidural. And it can be so frustrating, So I guess I would ask, as the woman who was seeking a natural birth, what would you say to birth workers who are close to giving up or who want you as a client, but they don't exactly know how to find you, I guess, or what to say to make sure that they're just attracting you and they're not attracting a bunch of hopefuls or a bunch of people who like the idea, but, aren't really grounded in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think for the doula that I did find, she was amazing at our first consultation. I think that's like the main thing, is that first conversation, where and another part too is just like the education that she gave me, right? So it was very realistic. And I actually mentioned this in my Insta story that every time I do go to give birth, I always ask for the epidural just because we know that it's there, right? So if I didn't know that there was any type of way to take this experience away from me, then I probably wouldn't mention it. But because we know that the epidural's there, like I feel like that's like my weird go-to. But then in the next frame, I talk about, but when I ask for the epidural, it's just at that point that the baby comes, right? And so I knew that for my second and my third baby, that if I feel like I'm at the point where I'm going to ask for the epidural, that means the baby's right there. It's going to come. And that's one thing that my doula actually told me. It's just like, you're going to feel like you're going to want that epidural, but that's like the moment when the baby comes. And going back to our faith, when we're walking towards something amazing and great and the devil starts to like hit us with all these things, it's just like on the other side of that, like you're literally there. You are literally there. And that's when he attacks you the most, right? He's like throwing everything at you because he's like, oh my, she's at the finish line. Let's throw everything we got at her. And so like, I know like, okay, I'm about to give up. I want this epidural, which means, and it triggered me for this last baby that I had. Like, I didn't even want the epidural. Like, I just said it. It just came out my mouth. But when it came out my mouth, I was like, okay, Juancito, he's right here. He's right here. So it gave me that extra push to like keep going, right? So I feel like the early conversations that I had with my doula the first time kind of gave me more realistic expectations of what happens when I get into the hospital. So I didn't feel like giving up so early in the beginning. Like every time I've gone to the hospital, I've done 8 centimeters dilated, just ready to push. So I think that those early conversations and that education, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. So it's really up to you guys to really pour into us that education, that pour into us that confidence that, you can do. And I go back to confidence because I think with that confidence, you can do anything, right? So she poured a lot of confidence into me, a lot of confidence. I'm so grateful for that because I think without it, I would have felt like, this is too much. I'm home and I'm doing all this stuff and it's not making a difference for me. And I just want I want to give up. Right. But that confidence, I think, is really what helped me in terms of pushing it to the finish line.
Okay, so what would you say to the mom who wants to achieve a natural birth and she's thinking about, she's hearing all these things about midwives and doulas and lactation consult, like all of this stuff, and she's kind of wondering, like, is that really necessary? What will you tell her the benefits are? And you talk a lot about confidence. Yeah, just what were some things that your midwife and that your doula did that built your confidence and that made you feel afterwards like, yep, I'm glad I did this?
So the first thing that I tell women who would like to go down this road of birthing naturally is the first thing you need is the right support team who has the same vision as you, right? So we talk about women of faith. That's also very important to me. So getting with someone who has the same vision as you, I think, is like really, really important, because there's nothing worse than getting to a situation or getting to the hospital and y'all on different pages and y'all talking about different things and they're not vouching for you. So another thing, especially for women of color, is just having someone there that can vouch for you, that can say, no, she don't want to do that. She wants to do this. She wants to get up and move around. She wants to do X, Y, and Z, because obviously, we're still not really heard in these environments. And I experienced that. So having someone there that can really vouch for you, someone that's like really on your team, is really important, right? So that's like the first thing I would look for. Someone who, when y'all have the conversation about, your birth plan, that they feel it, that they're on board, that, they're hearing you, that you feel heard, right? That's more important, that you feel heard. And then taking it from there. And so with my doula, like, we always talked. She was always available to me. I didn't feel like any question was stupid. I didn't feel insecure about reaching out to her. So making me feel comfortable, find someone that makes you feel comfortable, that doesn't make you feel inferior, because we're all doing this for the first time. And again, we don't know what we don't know. So it's, you're relying heavily on this person to guide us. And so you need to feel comfortable with asking those questions, with being vulnerable, with yourself, with your body. I think all those things are really important.
Okay, thank you for that. And that's good for the birthing process itself. Even as you're saying that, being vulnerable and being comfortable, not knowing, and it's a good segue into birth because there are a lot of points where you're like, you break down and you have to be comfortable with breaking down, or
Yes.
and because when you fight it, when you resist it, you have all these physical reactions in your body and it can hinder labor, it can slow labor down. So I think that's really important, especially for Black women. It's to learning to be vulnerable and asking for help, and it's it's okay to not know, and it's okay to need people in this time where you're vulnerable, and I think it's important for us to know that. So yeah. Okay, so can you talk a little bit about your birthing experiences? I know you have 3, so just take your time, I guess, to the best of your ability, and just kind of walk us through how they went. What would the high points, the low points, the birthing settings, any ways your husband was helpful, how your team worked together, just kind of all of that stuff.
Yeah, so I'll just combine all of my
Okay.
stories together, so to speak, as I was going through like the questionnaire. One thing that I think was a low point that I didn't mention, and I thought about it, and I was like, that was a low point. Was the fact that I wanted to change my birthing position for the last baby, right? So for the first two babies, I birthed them on my back, and I didn't feel too comfortable with that. So with the last one, which is again why doula is important, right? So just to back up, I'm in New York City. We're on major lockdown. I'm in the epicenter of the epicenter in Queens, New York. So it was really insane.
Wow.
Just having to have that fear of doing this by myself, because in the hospitals here in New York, they weren't allowing the doulas. At one point they said that they did not want the fathers in the room either. So there was 2 days where some of the hospitals here in New York mandated that there was no one to be in the birthing room, just because we were at the peak of deaths in New York. And so for 2 whole days, women who gave birth, they were doing it by themselves, completely by themselves. And then after the 2 days, after people were like protesting, writing letters, doing all that stuff, and then the governor had repealed that. And that was actually the same day that I gave birth. So I was able to have my husband come into the room. And I think that was all Jesus.
Look.
That was all Jesus. Because at that time, even just not having my doula present, I was just like, maybe I should just do this at home. And so we started like looking into having a birth at home. And then when they were talking about the dads can't be in the room, then I was just like, there's no way. I'm gonna just have my baby at home. And so we started looking into it. But there's a lot of women who can't afford to do that, right? Because insurance doesn't pay for that. So that was just one thing that I kept thinking about, was just like the out of pocket expenses and, just all those things. So that was scary for me. This is all very new, not having my doula there is very new. So, I had to talk to her on the phone, and she coached my husband on, what to do, what to bring. So he was like my little doula, and he did great. I was so nervous. I was like, this is not his thing. Like he's just not the type. But he did great. He did great. So we got to the hospital. It was like, all these restrictions, everything was just so different. Getting to the space and having to do your temperature and all these things before you actually get to the room. And I'm sitting here trying to breathe and everything, and they're like taking temperatures and doing all this stuff. I was just like ready to just go off on somebody. But we made it to the room. There was a lot of staff there. And the room was very different from what I'm used to. It's like a birthing center within a hospital. So, you're used to having like the beds and, everything's made up, but the room was very empty. They had very little furniture, I guess, because they didn't want to keep bleaching things down because of COVID. So there was like a lot of limitations there that I noticed. But as we got through the process and just, trying to breathe and do all the things I'm used to doing with my husband, my doula wasn't there. Getting to the point where where it was time to push, I went into the position on all fours, which is what I wanted to do. And then the midwife was like, no, this is not working. Let's try it on the back. And, just listening to her, was fine and everything. But after everything had happened, I was thinking to myself, like, I really wanted to try to have the baby differently. I didn't want to push on my back. And so that was one thing that I felt like if my doula was there, she would have really tried to push for me to, birth the way I wanted to. So that was like one thing that, was a low point of that last birth, I would say. The other ones were really pleasant. I've gone through the process like a labor thug, like I mentioned in my Insta stories, just pretty militant. Like, so we're New Yorkers, so we're kind of like militant with everything that we have to do. So that was just like my mindset was just like, girl, you're going to go in, you're going to do this. It is what it is. You're going to get it done. You're going to push to the finish line, just like that whole New Yorkers mentality. Like, we're resilient. We're going to do this and we're going to get it done. And I think that's kind of the mindset that I would suggest people to have. It's just like, this is kind of like a marathon. I think We get tired because we don't realize that this is not a sprint. It's more like a marathon, right? So if you have the mentality that this is a marathon, and I think if you have the mentality before you even get to the labor room, so like preparing your body, like you wouldn't show up to a 3K run without preparing your body for it, eating right, exercise. And I think
Exactly.
a lot of women, we don't realize that we need to prepare ourselves for this, right? We need to prepare our bodies for this. And so if we have that mentality that, this time I'm going to eat right, I'm going to try to exercise, I'm going to try to do all these things to prepare myself for this natural birth, I think more women would be successful to reaching the finish line. And then also, like I mentioned, knowing that there's an epidural in the back of your mind makes it harder, right? Knowing that there's something that could take this away, that this could all be over, that I'm going to not feel this pain or whatever, also kind of makes it hard. So kind of like going back and forth in your mind of like, let me just push through. I know that there's this epidural, but like, let me just push through to the next contraction or whatever. And then, it speeds up after that. So I think having that mindset is what kind of helped me get to that finish line also.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So I was writing some follow-up questions as you were talking, because you said a lot of stuff. You touched on a lot of points there. So let me go back some first. So what was the date of your son's birth? Your most recent baby was a boy, right?
Yeah, March 31st.
Okay. So, and that was, you said 2 days after the whole.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
like literally 2 days after. I was just like, man, what are we gonna do? Like, cause there's no way I'm doing this by myself. No, sir, no, ma'am.
Right. Yeah.
We
And
gonna do this at home.
yeah, and it's funny that you said that, because literally before I started this interview, I was just reading through we're just reading through my Bible some, and I ran across this in Isaiah 43, and it says, when you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. And I just think it's so interesting that the day after all of this madness is taking place, like right the day after, then, you said, okay, I can't do this. Jesus, help,
Right.
and then,
Exactly.
and that's what happened. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
so what do you think this experience did for your and your husband's relationship? Just comparing, the other births to him having to be your full-on doula. What do you think it did for your relationship?
Definitely helped my confidence in his abilities to step up, right? Because I feel like as women, we don't have all that much confidence in our husbands in this particular area, right? And so that's why we go ahead and we hire doula, because we're like, we need the right support. But really letting go, right? And completely being vulnerable with my husband, allowing him to lead in this area, helped me push this baby out. I think was super, super intimate for us, especially because like there was literally no one else there. There was literally no one else there. I had grand plans for this last baby. My auntie was going to be there. My doula was going to be there. I was going to have video. It was like,
Yeah.
it was going to be a whole production, girl.
Right.
Because I was going to upload this thing on YouTube. It was going to be fabulous. And it was anything but that. It was just me and him. It was super intimate. And it was just beautiful. It just made me love him more. Like, man, you the real MVP, man.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Then okay, so I guess I would say, to the wife who wants that partner support, and she really does want her husband to be involved, and he wants to be involved, but they're both like, can you do this? What would be your advice to both of them from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say I think what helped us get to this point of doing it together was having, again, that support from the doula. I mean, she really walked us through everything. And she really actually walked my husband through everything that he needed to do as my doula in that space. And so he felt the confidence, again, that confidence that he can go ahead and he can do this for me. He can be that support that I need in this space. You know, he has the tools. You know, my husband's very, very masculine, very, you know, very type A. So I didn't personally feel that confidence, but as my doula was talking to him and I was hearing the conversations, you know, that built the confidence within me that he can do it, because he's being receptive to her on the phone. He's listening to what she's saying. Because, you know, some men, like my husband, they're just like, oh, I know. But it's just like, you know, having him respond to her and hearing, you know, that he does want to show up for me in this space gave me the confidence that he can do it. And having the conversations with her gave him the confidence that he can do it.
Okay, I think thank you for touching on that, because you do get that a lot. You know, you get a lot of men who are like, I know, or, you know, as a doula, you don't feel as confident, or you don't feel like your information is being received. You know, it's like because a lot of, you know, guys are like, is this necessary?
A lot of guys are like that.
Yeah, and they're like this
macho. It's just like, I got this, girl. I know what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, oh, you know, is this doula just another bill? Like, why, you know, why are we doing all of this? So, what would be your advice to dads? Like, what kind of, I guess, first of all, how can doulas respectfully transfer this information to dads? And then how can dads, what are some characteristics or some dispositions that dads can take on to be receptive and to just be in the best position to support you?
Yeah, so I think one thing that was amazing that my doula said to my husband was just like, you know, just talking about the love that we have. So like, you love your wife, and so you want to show up for her in this way, and you want to do X, Y, and Z for her. You know, just kind of bringing it back to how we even conceived the baby, I think was really powerful, that she kind of went through, like, the way you guys conceived the baby is the way that you're going to get the baby to come out into this world. And just explaining to him, like, you know, you need to show up for her in this way. She needs this type of support from you, and kind of just using that kind of language, I think kind of softened him up from that macho, like, I know what I'm doing already. You ain't got to tell me how to treat my wife and all that stuff. Helped him to be receptive of what she was saying and how he needed to show up for me in this space. We know you're her husband. We know how, you know, you typically would treat her, but in this space, this is how she needs to be supported. So I think kind of using that softer language kind of helped him be receptive to her instruction.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so your midwife, was she just a hospital midwife, or was this the midwife you had hired?
This was a midwife I had hired before. So she was referred to me, and you know, just again with the consultation, when I met her and I was like telling her kind of my vision, she was 100% on board. Because if she wasn't, she wouldn't have been hired by me. Yeah. So, you know, I felt comfortable. I felt confident in her. Everything that I said, you know, she was just like, yeah, we can make that happen. Just about everything that I wanted, she was 100% on board with. So, again, that confidence was there when I spoke with her. And so I was 100% throughout the whole process with having her as my midwife.
Okay, and so you put that you have experienced birthing center birth too. So which birth was the birthing center, and like why did you switch to a hospital?
So with the birthing centers, actually, they're like kind of within the hospital.
Okay.
So it's like a separate space. So with all three of them, it was the same situation. With my first birth, it was in Manhattan, and the other ones were in Long Island. So with my first midwife, I was able to, which was a completely different one, I was able to be a little bit more free with my first baby. With the last two, it was a little bit more restrictions, just because I guess of the hospital. But that was important to me. I definitely wanted a separate space, still within a hospital, but like a separate space where I can kind of move around and kind of do my own thing.
Okay. So, well, I guess so all of them were in this birth center hospital environment.
Right. It's kind of like a fusion type of thing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you were saying about pushing through past that temptation to take the epidural. what does it mean for you to accomplish a natural birth? Why push through? Why not just get the epidural?
For me, I think at the end of it, it gave me this kind of supernatural confidence that I can just pretty much do anything, like anything. That I have a belief in myself, a stronger belief in myself and my abilities. That I feel like, if I put my mind to something and I feel strongly about it, that it's going to be accomplished, right? I believe in myself. I believe in my abilities, right? And so doing it the first time gave me that boost immensely. And I talk to other women now because obviously the circle's bigger, and it's kind of like the same thing. It's just more of this confidence that I brought my baby into this world the way I wanted to. And this is kind of like the end result. It's just like having a better postpartum experience. I've seen my sisters come out from a C-section, and you know what I'm saying? I had to hold their babies for them. They were still in bed. So for me, that's important. Like, I want to be able to hold my baby when I come home. I want to be able to do all the things that I normally would do. So those are pretty strong reasons for me why I want to push through to the finish line. Is because I know on the other side of it, it's glory.
Oh, wow. That is powerful. That's true. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone I've talked to whose birth naturally says that, that it's a powerful feeling. You feel like you can do anything after that. And you do. You really do. So on that note, how does your family's support of your decision change from the first birth to the
night and day? I'm like their warrior child now. It's just like my daughter Janice, she goes through this naturally. Like, everybody's like boasts about it. My husband boasts about it all the time. Like, he loves to tell the stories. Like, if you meet people in the street, he'd be like, my wife, she's superwoman. She birthed all babies naturally. So it's like night and day. Seriously, everyone's like so like proud.
That's good. That's good. And do you think that for maybe your younger cousins or nieces, if you have any, do you think that I don't know, this might help them in any way, or give them a different narrative of birth, or have you experienced anything like that?
Yeah, 100%. Even when I just posted it on my Insta stories, I was just posting because I just post. But so many women, I was like so happy because so many women was like, girl, like, thank you so much for sharing, because I feel like I could do it. And and I was completely transparent. I said in my Insta stories, like, I always ask for the epidural, but I never go through with it. So I'm not gonna front and say like this is a cakewalk, and you're not gonna think to yourself like, let me just get this epidural, child. Like, even with the second child, I was just like, I did the first one natural. I feel like I got my stripes. And so let me just go ahead and get this epidural. So like, I keep it real. Like, it's a process, just like anything else in life, it's a process, and you may feel like you want to give up, but it's just like pushing through, and just having the people around you that's going to help you push through. Like my husband, even when I was talking about the epidural, he constantly reminded me of my why. Like, why do you want to do this naturally? Like, you want to bring the baby into this world, undrugged. You want to be able to hold the baby after, you want to be able to do all these things. So reminding me of why, was super, super important. So yeah.
I think it's powerful that you bring up and that you're real about that. Like you said, it's not a cakewalk. It's not, like roses, and because that was a shocker for me with my first birth, even after training the birth work and everything. And I'm reading all these blogs, and of course, like you said, I couldn't find a lot of Black women. So it was a lot of, white women, and just all of a lot of the stories were like, well, it didn't hurt. And, it wasn't painful, and I was surprised, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, and so when, so, right. Then I was mad after I got into it, after I started like having contractions. I'm like, this absolutely hurts. I don't know what y'all did, but this hurts a lot more than I was expecting. And I definitely would have rather know that it hurts and then manage it.
Right. Realistic expectations. And again, that's where my doula really helped me. was just really giving me realistic expectations and letting me know, again, this is a marathon. So this is going to require some resilience. This is going to require a little bit of tenacity. This is
Mm.
gonna require a little bit of mental fortitude, so yeah.
Wow. Okay. And on that note, so how did you manage the pain? How did you cope? What are some things you did? What mentally, physically, spiritually? What were some tools that you used to manage and to prepare yourself in the subsequent pregnancies for the pain you knew was coming?
Right. So, so for the first two, my doula was there. She, was really hands-on. She did a lot of massages for me. She breathed with me. Obviously when the contractions start to speed up, your breathing can, get messed up a little bit. So like in my mind, like trying to, just, force myself through the pain was not the right thing to do. So I think at that point, having a doula is really important because they kind of bring you back down to that place where you're controlled. So that was another thing that she helped me with this last baby. Having the oils was really important because I get really nauseous. I don't know if you experience that, but my nausea is insane. So having the oils, I think, is really important for me when I was going through the process. And then also the birthing ball. That's like my best friend.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really sit on the birthing ball with my other two, but this last one, like I really felt like that really helped me a lot. Was that birthing ball, child? I was on that thing the whole time.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay. So this has been a great interview. Like I have gleaned a lot of knowledge from
Oh,
you
thank
for
you so
birth.
much.
Yeah, thank you for birth workers, for other women, for dads, support people. So thank you. So just to close or wrap everything up, I guess I'll just ask: is there any other parts of your birth story that you want to share that you absolutely want to share? Um, yeah, I'll start with that one.
I would say with just the last one, one thing that I think was a little bit more intentional about was taking the time out to pray in my head as I was going through that process. And when it got a little bit, for me, when things felt like it was out of control, kind of centering myself in prayer. I think for my first two, I wasn't intentional about it at all. Right. So with this last one, like I kept saying to myself, like, if you feel like things are going out of control, talk to Jesus. He's there. He's literally there with you in that birthing room and he's there. So go ahead and just talk to him and tell him, like, Jesus, this is getting a little crazy. Can you just come and just help me through this real quick?
Mm-hmm,
So I think that was really, really helpful with this last baby. And this last baby, it was only 4 hours that I was in labor. It was really, really fast. So I think because I was intentional, I think, it was able to be fast. It was able to be easy, no complications, nothing, none of that. Right. So I think, tuning into, Jesus and just talking to him and just saying, like, I need your strength right now, which is what I didn't do my first two babies. I was just like going with the flow. And I think
mm-hmm.
that was super helpful for me with this last baby.
That's good. That's good. And yeah, I know what you mean. You're
Mhm.
like, dang, where was my faith? What
Right.
happened? I forgot.
Yeah.
I forgot about Jesus.
I totally forgot. Like there's a power source that I can always call on. I do
Right.
that on any regular day, right? We do that all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something that we have to remember, that we can still call on him while we're giving birth. He's still there. He's in the room with us. He's just like, hey, I'm here with you. You need
Yeah.
me? Tap
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
in. Tap me into the
Yeah.
ring.
Right. Okay. Well, Janice, thank you so much. In closing, is there any advice that you would want to give, soon to be moms, first time, second time, whatever, who are just going into birthing in the middle of COVID? What would just be your advice to them or your words?
Grace. Grace. Give yourself grace. We give yourself grace. We are all doing this. If you're doing it for the first time, again, you're doing this for the first time. Even the second, third, fourth, fifth. It's every time it's different. I never really felt like I was a pro. Like I still felt pretty vulnerable in all of my births, and so I need to give myself grace. And so I think that's what I would tell women. Like, you don't need to know it all. You don't need to have all the tools. You may not be able to have a doula, like me. I wasn't able to have a doula, but give yourself grace. And I think prayer is really important. Grace and prayer, and just knowing that you can call on Him, right? Like I mentioned before, I didn't do that with my other births, and I really wish I did, because I feel like I would have been in a better position on the other side of it.
Mm, okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Again, this has been wonderful. I learned a lot, and I feel so honored that I got the privilege to talk to you, and to yeah, and I'm so thrilled that you had a beautiful birth outcome in the middle of this pandemic that none of us saw coming. And
Mhm.
you took it very well, with all your plans that you had. You still you seem to have still been victorious. So
Absolutely.
congratulations. Yeah, congratulations, and thank you again.
Thank you for
Um,
having me on.
no problem, no problem. So everybody who's tuned in, this has been Listening to Black Women. And this is Miss Janice Fredericks-Spell of the Retail Genius sharing her birth story with us in the middle of COVID.
Yep, we're still in
So still in it, in New York City of all places.
it.
So thank you all for watching. If you like this, if you enjoy this content, please share, please like, please subscribe. And until next time, y'all take care.
Awesome.